Hello, I'm Claire Smith and welcome to my channel. So today I'm going to be talking about Creed, the history of the Creed brand, and also talking about a few of their famous celebrity clients. So if you haven't seen me before, I'm Claire Smith. I make videos all about perfume, perfume science, perfume history, perfume psychology, but I also just do some straight perfume reviews and also fun perfume tags. So if you are interested, then please do consider subscribing, and also please like this video if you do end up liking this content. So Creed started back in the 1760s and they really grew out of a tailoring business. And their history really mirrors the history of modern perfumery. Modern perfumery really grew out of the leather industry. Perfumes were used to cover up the bad smells associated with the leather industry. And that's really how Creed began as well, with using fragrance. They would scent gloves because gloves were things that people held close to their faces and they didn't want gloves to smell badly. So they would always perfume them back in the 1700s. So Creed used to take commissions from various people, and really their first big commission was one from King George III in 1781. They ended up making a fragrance for him called Royal English Leather. So Creed then continued taking commissions from various ruling houses in Europe. So they took commissions from the Austro-Hungarian Emperor and Empress Franz Joseph and Sissi, Tsar Nicholas II, Queen Victoria, Napoleon III, and also his Empress Eugenie, as well as Queen Marie Christina of Spain. It was only later on in history that other people started to appreciate Creed's brand. So it was really during Hollywood's golden age that Creed became famous for making fragrances to celebrities. So during Hollywood's golden age, Creed made Green Irish Tweed, which was originally made for Cary Grant. They also formulated Grace Kelly's wedding fragrance when she married Prince Rainier of Monaco in 1956. They made her a fragrance called Fleurissimo. And actually Creed have also been perfumers to particular politicians. So for example, Winston Churchill used to wear Tabarome, and also John F. Kennedy used to wear Vetiver. So really for Creed, that commission-based business model and that celebrity and royal association really worked for them right up until the 1970s. It was only then that Creed started selling their fragrances to the general public from their Paris boutique. And really their fragrance brand expanded massively. So given all of that history and heritage behind the Creed brand, I was really curious to try some fragrances from Creed myself and to see what I thought of them. So I ended up buying a Creed sample set, which retails for £38 for 5 fragrances. So these really aren't cheap to try. But my top tip is that if you sign up to their website, when they have a new fragrance out, they actually send you mailers and will let you try the fragrance for free. They will send you a sample. So that's definitely worth doing. So I'm just going to walk you through each of these fragrances in turn. I'm going to start off with the oldest ones first. I'm going to timestamp this video, so if you do want to see one particular fragrance and you don't want to watch the entire thing, that's perfectly fine. But I'm going to go through them in chronological order of release and just tell you my thoughts on them, and then giving you a bit of a summary at the end. So the first fragrance is one called Spring Flower, and this was actually released back in 1996. So this fragrance was said to have been a commission that Creed made for Audrey Hepburn. So Audrey Hepburn died in 1993, and I think that's what made Creed feel like they could release this fragrance finally. So this fragrance is meant to be inspired by the golden age of Hollywood, but also to be inspired by Audrey Hepburn's holiday home and the flowers and the fruits that were in Audrey Hepburn's garden. So this fragrance is also famous because it's actually supposed to be a favourite of Julia Roberts and also Lana Del Rey's. So I was really curious to try this one. So this to me really smells very 90s. It really makes me think of the typical scent profile of the 90s, the mid to late 90s, which was really that kind of fuzzy peach and then some white florals. It opens really with a slightly indolic jasmine, but quite a gentle jasmine really overall, quite soft and quite fluffy. Alongside that jasmine, there's also a load of fruits, but really the thing that pops out is the fuzzy peach. And the fuzzy peach is kind of sparkly. It's kind of powdery, but also sparkly. And really this fragrance overall just makes me think of a lake in a garden with some sunlight going onto the lake. When the sunlight is dancing off the top of the water, that's what this fragrance really makes me think of. It's a bit light, it's a bit sparkly, but it also has that kind of indolic feel with the florals. So as this dries down, I don't think it really evolves that much. I would say the indolic florals do calm down a little bit, but also the apple pops out a little bit more in the dry down. And it sort of stays quite sparkly, quite fuzzy peach, but with some musk. And the musk here is not entirely clean. I wouldn't say it's a white musk, but I wouldn't say it's something that's really dirty either. It's sort of something in between. It's very 90s in feel, just generally, with that kind of musky, peachy jasmine profile. I think for me, this is just not the fragrance that I would typically go for, and I think that's why I'm not in love with this one. But I don't think it's a bad fragrance at all. And for someone who doesn't like peach, I think that's quite a big thing for me to say. But yeah, it's just not my scent profile. And I think if you like fragrances like Chanel Allure or fragrances like that, sort of from that era, you'll probably enjoy this one. That kind of scent profile with the peach and with the musk. So that's Spring Flower. So the next fragrance is called Love in White, and this fragrance was released in 2005, and I think the first bottle of this was sent to Laura Bush. And this fragrance is known as the White House fragrance because it's actually been worn by Laura Bush and also by Michelle Obama, so by two first ladies. And it was also rumoured to be worn by Angelina Jolie. And it's supposed to be a wedding fragrance. It's supposed to be something that reflects a feeling of purity and whiteness, but also it's supposed to be inspired by sailing and the freedom of being out on the open water. And yeah, I get that. It's a little bit aquatic feeling almost, but I wouldn't say it's marine. So this fragrance is all about smooth, petally, white florals. So it's got magnolia, but it's also got jasmine, and the jasmine is really the prominent thing in the opening, along with the narcissus. The narcissus is really nice in this fragrance, and I really like narcissus in fragrances, and it's so rare to smell it and it's so distinctive. It really does make you think of the actual flower, but also of the stem and the leaves, you know, when you get that kind of sticky substance when you break open narcissus leaves, that kind of stickiness that you get in those flowers. It makes me think of that as well, and it's really fresh and very spring-like. It's got that creamy green, almost lily pollen-like sweetness to it as well. The background of this fragrance is a mild orange peel, really soft and not too bitter, but not too bright either. And again, this is warm, but it also has a bit of a freshness to it and almost a very slight saltiness that's just making it a little bit sparkly almost. So in the dry down, I don't think this fragrance again evolves that much. I think the only thing really is that the prominence of the florals changes a little bit. So maybe in the opening, whereas the narcissus is quite prominent in the opening, I would say in the dry down, the magnolia is more dominant. It's definitely very smooth and very white and very petally, and it almost has a greenness and almost a soapiness to it, but also it's quite a powdery fragrance. The background of the dry down is really that sort of sweet, orangey, woody feel, but also with that freshness still lingering. So this fragrance did feel very appropriate for a formal event. It felt very garden party to me, but it also felt like something you could wear every day, and it could be your signature fragrance. It's very, understated, elegant, but definitely has a presence to it. And it's something that I found to be, not beast mode again, but still was quite good, and it did project and it did last throughout the day. I thought it was a really nice fragrance overall, and I'd be happy to wear this one actually. It doesn't smell, trend-led or anything like that. It's quite an old fragrance now. It's just quite a classic floral fragrance, and I think it definitely would suit people like Laura Bush, like Michelle Obama, and like Angelina Jolie, who have said to have worn this one. So yeah, that's Love in White. So the next fragrance is called Acqua Fiorentina, and this one was released in 2009. So this fragrance is supposed to be inspired by the streets of Florence in medieval times in the 15th century. So this opens for me with a really soft feeling citrus. And it's kind of sparkly and clean as well at the same time. The citrus here is not sharp, it's very rounded and very soft. And it's very sort of pastel yellow feeling. So there's lemon, there's also some grapefruit, but don't be thinking either of those two things are sharp or citric. Really, as well as that citrus, there's also some green apple, but again, it's very gentle. It's not really something that, to me, sometimes apple in fragrances can make me think of bathrooms and bathroom products and like air fresheners. And this fragrance doesn't make me think of air fresheners. I think it's really nicely done, actually. So there's not really much more to say about this one. Really, in the dry down, it's pretty much the same. Perhaps the apple's slightly more prominent. There's also a sort of slight fruitiness, but again, with that kind of sparkly, watery feel. And then the base is a slight warm woodiness, but it's a very, very gentle woodiness. And it really just melds in with that citrus. So it's more of like a citrus woodiness. So this fragrance overall just felt very refreshing. It felt like something I'd want to spritz on a hot day. I do worry about how long this one might last in warmer weather though. In cooler weather, this had no problems with longevity, but I would say this is quite close to skin. This one didn't feel as strong as the other fragrances in Creed's range, and I think if that's a concern for you, then this one's probably a no. I wouldn't describe this one as exactly a cologne, but it definitely has a cologne-like feel to it. It is refreshing in that kind of cologne way. So that's Acqua Fiorentina. So the next fragrance is called Aventus for her, and this one was released in 2016 as a reaction to the success of Aventus. So Creed say that it took them 3 years to develop this fragrance. So this fragrance really opens with loads of citrus again, and also some apple. That seems to be the typical note profile of Creed's earlier fragrances, citrus and apple. Here again, the citrus is very soft, it's lemon, bergamot, but very, very rounded, nothing sharp or something that stands out. But also the apple is very gentle and definitely on the greener side of apple. There's also some fruitiness going on, but it's more of a green fruitiness from blackcurrant. It's not really the blackcurrant itself, it's not necessarily just the leaves, it's something in between. I think really as this dries down, it becomes warmer and there's sort of an ambery musk that steps in, and it also becomes a little bit woodier. The fruits really start to meld together and they become imperceptible to each other really. But I would say that the apple is something that really becomes more like the green skin of an apple. It's less bright and less fruity overall. This becomes creamier as well. So it's a creamy, slightly fruity, but woody, ambery, warm musk really in the dry down. I think if you watch me a lot, you will know that if I smell citrus and apple together in fragrances, I sometimes get reminded of bathroom cleaners and air fresheners. And yes, in the first few minutes of this fragrance, it did make me think along those lines, but that really went quite quickly. And I sort of didn't have that thought later on in the fragrance. I thought it lasted a long time, and actually on me, this was pretty strong. I thought that it was quite a loud fragrance. And I wouldn't want to overspray this because I think it would be very overwhelming very quickly with all that musk and that woodiness. I think this is just not really my scent profile again, and it's not something that I would choose, but I can see why people would choose it. It's very clean, it's very uncomplicated, and I think it's sort of something you could just wear and not really think about. It's a very everyday kind of fragrance, which I think maybe a fragrance at this price point is not something that people are necessarily looking for. So that's Aventus for her. So the next fragrance is called Windflowers, and this one was released in 2021. And I'd say this fragrance is probably the first one in the timeline where I see a difference in how Creed are putting together their fragrances. This is one where they're starting to move away from that kind of sparkly citrus feel in their fragrances, and they're starting to get sweeter. So Creed say that this fragrance has been inspired by modern femininity and by dancers. So this fragrance opens with a plasticky peach and jasmine, and those two things really make me think of the opening of vintage Gucci Rush. It really is pretty much spot on for Gucci Rush, apart from it doesn't have that kind of coriander, that dry coriander feel to it. But it is quite screechy peachy, just like Gucci Rush was. So alongside that Gucci Rush kind of feel, this also has a very artificial smelling sweetness in the background of the fragrance. Actually makes me think of sucralose sweeteners that you get in diet drinks and you get in hot chocolate sometimes, you know, when they aren't actually hot chocolate, they're just kind of things thrown together and then sweetened with sucralose. And I really hate sucralose, so this is just a big no for me. But also, as this dries down, there's so much ambroxan. It's literally the most ambroxan-laden fragrance I've smelt since The Favourite by Penhaligons, and that was pretty ambroxan-laden. They've just gone ambroxan crazy in this one. It's just overwhelming for me. In the dry down, the peachiness stays, but it does sort of calm down slightly, but it's still quite plasticky overall. There's also a ton of ambroxan, and actually that sort of takes over the rest of the fragrance really. It does have a slightly musky, powdery feel to it, but really it's the ambroxan that you can smell, especially close up. If you sniff this one up close up, the ambroxan really takes over and it's quite bitter. And I think that's really something that I don't enjoy about this fragrance. So this one lasted ages on my skin and it was really quite strong actually. I really struggled to get this one to get off my skin because of probably all the ambroxan in it. And I think this one just isn't for me. I think this is just not a scent profile that I love because of the peach. And also it's just not something that I love because of the ambroxan. Really on paper, if I look at the notes, you know, tuberose and jasmine, there should be a chance. There should be a good chance with this fragrance that I might possibly like it. But I'm afraid this one just isn't for me. So that's Creed Windflowers. So we're getting quite up to date now with the Creed fragrances, and this one is Carmina, and this one was released in 2023. So this fragrance is meant to be inspired by fashion sketches, but to me Carmina makes me think of the dye carmine, which is a really sort of crimson pink, almost red kind of colour, and this fragrance really makes me think of those colours, especially in the dry down. Also, this fragrance really represents a complete departure from Creed's previous sort of core note profile of the sparkly citrus, that kind of sparkly feel that they have in their fragrances, and that sparkly musk that they quite often use. This one's quite different. So this fragrance really opens with a deep red rose, but also a slightly leathery saffron and violet. And the violet here is unsweetened and it's non-powdery. It's more kind of that warm fuzzy violet that's often paired with rose. Also in the background there's some dry fruitiness, and there's also a slight sweetness, but the sweetness is quite tempered, at least in the beginning of the fragrance. It's just quite dry and it almost makes you want to drink some water. This fragrance is so dry. I think that's probably because there's so much ambroxan here, and there's also a little bit of musk as well. In the dry down the musk goes slightly dirtier, and also the peony pops out, and really the fruitiness starts to amp up, but it's definitely a drier fruitiness. The far dry down of this is that red rose, that kind of dry black cherry, and also some leathery saffron. This fragrance really makes me think of Atelier Cologne's Rose Anonyme. They're not same in kind of note profiles. I mean, they're both rose fragrances, but I think they both have that same dry feel to them, and they both sort of get me a little bit in the back of the throat. This fragrance was really long lasting and really quite strong, so I don't think this fragrance was really for me because of all the ambroxan. But I did really like the dry fruitiness in the dry down. I thought that was a nice touch. I like that kind of dry black cherry feel. So that's Carmina. So the final fragrance is one that was released only this year. I think it was released in either late January or early February, and this one's called Queen of Silk. And this fragrance is clearly meant to reflect both the connections with royalty, so it's in a purple bottle to reflect that, but it's also meant to kind of give you the feeling of silk. So this is a tuberose fragrance, but also with a leathery saffron feel, much like Carmina, but I think this fragrance probably has more of that leathery saffron feel. There's also a really kind of fruity, rich, resinous background to this fragrance. The first time I wore this fragrance, I got really close up to it in the opening, and it just made me think of nail polish remover. It just had that kind of, I don't know, almost chemical acetone kind of smell to it. And I think really the saffron here as well also made it smell a little bit plasticky to me. But that was smelling very close up. And whilst the ambroxan is super noticeable in this fragrance, it's really quite heavy on ambroxan. I think smelling it from further away, this fragrance is actually quite pleasant and actually nice. The dry down for me is a little bit nicer than the opening, and it's a warm, ambery, honeyed, resinous tuberose fragrance. I think that kind of feel to this really makes me think of Jean-Paul Gaultier's Scandal by Night. I know that fragrance has cherry, but I think if you took the cherry out and just replaced it with just a general fruitiness, you'd basically have the dry down of Queen of Silk. And I think that really shows you just how sweet this fragrance is as well. This fragrance actually left a huge trail for me. I had people remark they could smell it. And I also think that it's something that's really long lasting. It's something that lasted me overnight, having sprayed it in the evening on my skin. I could still smell it in the morning. On clothes, this would last a couple of days. I think I've got mixed feelings on this one. I think this fragrance is something that I don't want to smell really close up, but actually in the air, it does smell quite pleasant. I can imagine other people really enjoying smelling this on me, you know, from a distance. I think this is definitely one that creates a cloud. It's definitely got some kind of presence to it. I think it just depends how strong you like your fragrance and who you're wearing your fragrance for. If you're wearing it for other people, this might be a really good one to choose. But if you're wearing it for you and you want to sniff it close up, then this is probably not the one to choose. So I think your enjoyment of this fragrance is going to be entirely determined by how sensitive you are to ambroxan. Similarly with Carmina and also with Windflowers. If you can't stand ambroxan, you're probably not going to enjoy Queen of Silk. If you're someone who's not that fussed by ambroxan and you like tuberose and you like resinous fragrances and you like sweetness, so you particularly like honeyed kind of styles of sweetness, I think this one could be a winner for you. So that's Queen of Silk. So those are the fragrances I have samples of, but I have also tried Virgin Island Water, and I would suggest that if you are looking for a Creed to try for your first one, go and try that one, because I think that's probably the friendliest fragrance that they do. And I think if you like lime, if you like rum and you like coconut, you can't really go wrong with that one. So please let me know, have you tried any of the fragrances that I mentioned in this video? What do you think of them? Which are your favourite from Creed? Which ones are you not so keen on? And do you think Creed have taken a noticeably different direction in the last few years with their fragrances? Do you smell this difference like I do? I'd be really interested to know your opinions. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.